Hello, Drew.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good.
Good.
Where are you from?
Part of the tech support on the back end here.
Oh, excellent. So save me.
I'm just gonna see. Ashley will be the other person. Yeah, she should be in just a minute.
Okay. I'm broadcasting from my buddy's house in Yucca Valley, so hopefully it all works.
Looks good so far.
Am I making each speaker a co-host or am I spotlighting them? What have people done prior?
You could do either way. It's the last couple ones we've done. We just made the speakers co-hosts, and that seems to be pretty smooth.
Okay, I'll plan on that. I got an email that one of our speakers is sick or something, so we only have 3 today. Hello, Armina.
Hello. Good morning.
Look at you, you're all dressed up.
I thought I should dress up, right?
You look good.
Thank you. It's funny. I always wear, a jacket, blazer when I teach in the classroom. And this year I was like, yeah.
So one of the students got sick. So we're only gonna have 3 presents today. So you'll have up to 20 minutes if you want.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. It's not Mangyue. She's presenting, right?
Mangyue's presenting, yes.
Okay.
It's Hanna Rachoń from Warsaw.
I hope it's not COVID.
Yeah, they didn't say.
Yeah. Did I tell you that I got my second shot? Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
So you are good to go.
Sounds good. I can share, right? Oh yeah, it says host disable participant screen sharing.
I just enabled the multiple participants, so try see if you can share now.
Oh yeah, thank you. Oh, yeah, it works. Yeah. Thank you.
Hopefully my swing will be dialed in. Hi, Sylvia. Sylvia. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Oh, I'm now. I have problem with my sound. Yes, Sylwia, it's correct. Nice to meet you, James.
Nice to meet you.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I need to find something new headphones because that one badly. It's low battery now. Excuse me.
See you later.
Check. Are you hear me? Someone could you? Someone could tell me. Someone hear me? No. Now, someone hear me? No. Now, someone hear me?
Do you know how many people are joining, or just the presenters?
Well, I know we kind of went over it in terms of time, so people might show up in a few more minutes, I would say. Should be several participants as well.
Hello, now, someone hear me?
Yes,
Great. Thank you.
I was in a session yesterday and several faculty members were in it as well. So
Yeah. Can I try sharing my screen?
yep, go ahead.
Okay. It's okay.
We can
Yep,
see
we
it.
can see it. Mhm.
Thank you very much.
So, hi, Jim. So, Drew and I will be your technical moderators. So, if any technical issues arise, we will help you with anything that should happen. Hopefully not, but just in case, I just wanted to let you know. I think I've seen you before, but I just wanted to say hello.
Hello.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Always nice to have backup.
We'll probably start in about a couple of minutes. Hopefully, people will hop on. I'm sure people will, and we'll admit people as they come in. So whenever, just let me know when you're ready to start at any time.
We'll start on time. So 11 o'clock sharp. Here comes Chiffon. Hey, Shaban, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Dr. Sundali?
Doing well, thanks. Did you get your shots?
Not yet. Planning to though.
Okay. We're still waiting for one of our presenters.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Okay. There we go. Mangyue's here. Okay, thank you for attending our session today. My name's James Sundali. I'm the graduate director of the PhD program at UNR. And I'm very excited to hear from 3 of our PhD students who are presenting today, 2 from UNR and 1 from the Warsaw School of Economics. To our presenters, I got an email this morning that Hanna, Rachoń, one of the Warsaw presenters, is not able to make it today due to some minor health issues. So that means each of you will have up to 20 minutes for your presentation, and we'll still leave 30 minutes after for audience questions and discussions. So we'll get started right away with Armina, and she is presenting an investigation into effects of social influence on risk aversion in the context of financial decisions, a topic near and dear to my heart. Take it away, Armina.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon or good night, depends on the time zone you're in. My name is Armina Karapetian. I'm a PhD student in the business administration program at UNR. And today I'm going to be talking about measuring the social influence function. I'd like to acknowledge my academic advisor, Dr. Sundali, and my collaborators who've been working on this project with me, Drs. Guerrero, Hanna, and Riedinger. So their ongoing help and support in this project. So how did this project come about? So when I was reading, started reading the literature on decision making, and we all know that we're not making our decisions in a vacuum, right? So we, looking at what other people are doing, and that kind of informs us to when we make our decisions, especially in situations with imperfect information, a situation when we're dealing with risky decisions. However, it struck me that no one has tried to quantify this relationship. And then I thought, well, that would be a good idea for a project. And that's how this project came about. So the objective of this project is to develop a theoretical model based on empirical data to quantify the effects of social influence on decision-making in the context of financial markets. There are 4 streams of research that I looked at when building the theoretical framework for the experiments and for the analysis. I'm going to go very briefly over these 4 streams of research. The first has to do with risk aversion and investment decisions. There is another one that has to do with the role of social interactions. And in changing risk aversion levels, then herd behavior and information cascades and personality traits and risk aversion. So when it comes to making decisions, deciding between risky prospects, there are 2 main theories that try to explain this, individuals' behavior. And they kind of at odds with each other. So we have the expected utility theory. That's kind of the classical theory developed in 1944 by von Neumann and Morgenstern, and basically tells us that individuals make decisions in between risky choices by comparing the expected utility value. And then we had the prospect theory that was proposed in 1979 by Kahneman and Tversky, who said, well, actually, it's not that simple. There are many more factors that play a role in the decision-making process. We're subject to cognitive biases. We're talking about risk aversion behavior, risk-seeking behavior, depending on circumstances and so forth. So how can we measure the level of risk aversion? There are many different approaches and methodologies, but I want to specifically talk about this one that was developed by Holt and Laura in 2002. They developed this experiment that we actually used as, they replicated this experiment as a part of our experiment as well. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes explaining what it's all about. So participants presented with 10 lottery choice questions. So this, you can see this lottery choice questions on the table in front of you, and they can choose between option A and option B. Each lottery choice gives some odds of winning. So for example, the first line here you see, you're choosing between option A, which is a 1 in 10 chance to win $2, or 9 in 10 chance to win $1.60. And option B, which is 1 in 10 chance to win $3.85 and 9 in 10 chance to win 10 cents. So these 10 choices are presented always sequentially, and we did it the same way. Option A represents a safe choice. And it's used as an indicator of the individual's risk aversion. So what's interesting here, if you look at the right column of this table, the expected payoff difference, if you see that in question 5, the difference between option A and option B becomes negative, the expected payoff difference. So a risk neutral individual would have switched to option B at this point, at question 5. And that's what you see on the chart on the right, that a little dotted line that represents this risk neutral choice, where you choose option A all the way through question 4, and on question 5, you switch to option B. However, that's not what Holt and Laura saw in their experiment, right? So they did this experiment with their students, and they saw more kind of this slopey lines that you see. And this experiment has been replicated by many other researchers, and the data always comes in that actually individuals will, do not switch immediately to option B. So they switch much later. So they kind of stick with this safe choice much longer. And again, that's the experiment that we're going to that we replicated as part of our project. So what factors influence the levels of risk aversion? So there are obviously some individual factors such as age and wealth, gender has been shown, as well as the experience of low market returns. So individuals who've lived through recessions and depressions have a very different level of risk aversion. There's been some research that showed that social interactions also play a role. There's definitely framing of gains and losses that's important. That's kind of building on the main finding on the prospect theory. Social context is important. Keeping up with Joneses, so the idea that we are much more locally tuned to our immediate environment when making this decision, and gain attraction. So gain attraction is also important factor when making those decisions. We're known for some time that people conform to the decisions of others, even if the observed prior decisions are inaccurate. That's the result of the famous Ashes experiment from 1955. There are two types of influence. There's normative and informative. So when influence that we're investigating falls under the informative social influence. So it's the influence to accept information obtained from another as evidence about reality. So that's what we think is going on. There's also been some research that showed that certain personality traits may play a role in affecting levels of risk aversion. So based on all of that, we formulated 3 hypotheses. Our first main hypothesis is non-directional, and it states that there will be a difference between the number of individuals who chose option A, which again is a safe choice, between the control group and test groups. And I'll explain what those control groups and test groups are when I talk about the design of the experiment. And the 2, so the hypothesis 1 is our main hypothesis, and hypothesis 2 and 3 explore the directional hypothesis, and they explore the relationship between the behavior or the relationship between the information about the number of prior respondents who chose this safe choice, and two scales that measure personality traits: the Mini-IP, which is the Big Five Markers questionnaire, and the Netherlands Comparison Orientation Survey. So these are our three hypotheses. And that brings us to our study design. So all our experiments, and we run 2 experiments so far. The second experiment is ongoing. They have the same design. So they consist of 3 parts. The first part is the same Holt-Lowry questionnaire that I just showed you, but we do vary some additional information that we provide to the participants. And then we have a big 5-factor survey, the short version of that, the Mini-IP, and the Iowa Netherlands Comparison Orientation Scale that measures social comparison orientation. So a very short survey. Kind of the whole experiment takes, I would say, 5 to 10 minutes. How did we recruit our participants? So we developed our survey in Qualtrics, and we recruited our participants in Amazon mTurk. They were guaranteed a $1 payment for participation, and we provided some incentives for answering the questions. So there's some lottery choices, there's some questions that were randomly chosen, and participants were paid based on the decision that they made in that choice. All our participants were at least 18 years old and located in the United States. And in the first experiment, we had 1 control group and 2 test groups. And the participants were randomly assigned to either of these groups, and they didn't know which groups they've been assigned to. So this is the setup of this Holt-Lowry questionnaire. So the participants in the control group were not provided any additional information. So they just received this straight, Holt-Lowry questionnaire. Participants in test group 1 were provided additional information on the average number of people out of 100 who chose option A. And that they provided this information for each question. Now, we didn't make up these numbers. The numbers that we provided to them came from the pilot study that we ran prior to the first experiment. And test group 2 had the same information, but framed in terms of option B. So the test group 1 and test group 2 were kind of the mirror opposite or polar opposite of each other. But again, the data was based on the information that we received from our pilot study. So we calculated our sample size. So we needed 915 participants. That's what we calculated a priori. However, we only were able to recruit 315 participants, and they were kind of more or less evenly split between the control and test groups. And we ended up with 237 observations that passed all the attention checks that were built into the questionnaire. And this is the result. So the red line represents the answers of the control group participants. The green line is from test group 1, and the blue line is test group 2. So as you see, and as what we kind of anticipated to see, there's the shift to the difference becomes really pronounced between the control group and the test group, starting with this question 5 and 6, when we know where the risk neutral choice would have been to switch immediately to option B. And we see that indeed the behavior of the participants in the control group and the test groups differ, and it differs statistically. So there's definitely some framing effect going on, and because the participants in group 1 behave in test group 1 also behave differently from the participants in test group 2. But we finally, basically, we found the support for our hypothesis 1. And that was the end of our first experiment. And then we designed the second experiment to follow up, because we wanted to better understand, to tease out some of those influences and try to explain the differences in behavior. So we ran the second experiment, and that experiment is not finished, so it's ongoing, but I can share with you some preliminary data that we received. And again, the same setup. We still have the Qualtrics. We still recruited our participants via Amazon mTurk. The payment structure was the same, the demographics were the same as in the first experiment, but the main difference was that now we had a control group and 4 test groups. So what are these test groups? So the first 2 test groups, basically, they provided a not representative sample from our data that we obtained from the first experiment, and they provided additional information in terms of the out of 10 prior participants who chose option B in this case, and so it's option A and option B. So again, they were opposites. They were kind of mirror opposite of each other. And we provided some additional language that said that that alerted our participants that this information is based on 10 persons who took the survey in the past. For test group 3 and test group 4, we only provided them answers to 1 other person who completed the survey during the experiment 1. Test group 4 had an additional information that this person has also received one of the highest payoffs. So we wanted to see if their behavior is going to be different in all of those 4 different scenarios. And again, this experiment is ongoing, so we don't have the final data. So far, we need to collect 500 responses. We so far collected 200 observations, and then the numbers are kind of split evenly between the control and all the test groups, about 35, between 34 and 38 participants per group. And this is our result. This is our preliminary result. So we can see again that the behavior of the participants in the control group definitely differs from the behavior of the participants in the test groups. So far with our sample size, only question 6 rises to the level of statistical significance for the control group and test group 3. However, we think that as we collect more data, the other data points such as question 6, 7, and 8 will also rise to the level of significance, of statistical significance, thus proving our hypothesis, our first hypothesis. We have not collected enough data yet to test hypothesis 2 and 3, so that's going to be upcoming, but that's where we are at right now. So obviously we're still in the collecting data. We still need more data to draw more definitive results, but we believe that so far the results provide support for our hypothesis. That's all from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Armina. We'll go ahead and hold off questions until the end. So if you could stop sharing your screen and we'll turn it over to Mangyue. We've had a lot of other attendees show up since you started. So they heard what a dynamic speech this was going to be and everybody came rushing in, Armina. So our second presenter today is Mangyue Fan, another PhD student from UNR. And the title of her presentation is Looking for Similarity, Analyzing the Relationship Between CEO Brand Image and Company Brand Image.
Yes, thank you. Let me share my screen.
And Mangyue, you will have up to 20 minutes for your presentation as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Oh, sorry. My name is Mangyue. I'm a first-year graduate student studying management at UNR. I got quite a lot of suggestions and feedback from my co-authors, Dr. Hanna and Dr. Jones. They are professors who worked in the UNR Management department as well. This research is about analyzing the relationship between CEO brand image and company brand image, and the role of perceived similarity in this relationship. The facts of CEO as a celebrity or spokesman for their companies have been largely explored by previous research. For example, CEO has effects on stock market returns. CEO have effects on capital investments and company profits. Recently, some researchers started looking at the CEO's effect on the overall company's reputation. Basically, those research regard the CEO as a part of the organization. They were exploring how the CEO as an occupation or as a leader of the organization could affect the company. But in our research, the new thing we want to bring that we will isolate the CEO from the organization as a human brand. We regard the CEO as an independent human brand that has his own equity and his own right. Similar to the inanimate brand, the CEO as a human brand creates a brand image in consumers' minds as well. So what is CEO brand image? We could answer it from a more broad and easily understood construct of brand image. Basically, brand images are kind of perceptions that stored in consumers' memory after they interact with the brand for a long time. For example, we are very familiar with the brand Apple. When I ask you to recall the brand Apple, you will naturally have an image of the brand logo and its products like iPhone, MacBook, or Apple Watch. The image of Apple in your mind could also be personality traits or specific characteristics of the product, such as innovation, gorgeous design, luxury, etc. All those perceptions that stored in your mind are the brand image. So the CEO's brand image is quite similar to the brand image, but you change the inanimate object's brand to the human object CEO. A well-known example of a CEO brand could be Elon Musk. We might have a perception of a rich guy, psycho, or crazy entrepreneur when we recall him. So in our study, we want to see how people perceive CEOs, what image stored in their memory, and how and when will their stored image of the CEO affect how they perceive the company. We reviewed existing literatures and found some support from series and empirical work. Dia Zarantonello 2015 defined the brand image, which is we call company brand image in our slide, as a set of associations or perceptions linked to the brand that consumers hold in their memory. Later, Andrini et al. 2020 detached the CEO brand image from company brand image, offered the reliable measurement for this multidimensional construct. And we propose that CEO brand image is quite different from company brand image and affect company brand image through perceived similarity. The reason that we are interested in the perceived similarity is that we are inspired by the network theory. Kergman et al. 2002 proposed that similar people have a strong tendency to form ties to each other. People who have a CEO image in their mind tend to perceive more similarity among themselves and the CEO, and they think the CEO is like them on some level. And Chatterjee and Toffel 2016 empirically found that CEOs make their followers believe the similarities between followers and the CEO. Consumer brand identity refers to the individual's sense of sameness with a particular brand. This construct sounds quite like our mediator perceived CEO consumer similarity, but quite similar to perceived similarity, but actually they are different. Because brand identity measures the perceived similarity among people and brands, while our mediator measures the perceived similarity among people and the CEO. From looking at the marketing literature, we can easily find that brand identity is quite useful and important. Brand marketers communicate with their target consumers by making them aware of brand identity, thus letting consumers construct a brand image. A firm can enhance brand loyalty by ensuring that there is congruence between brand identity and the brand image. And we found Bosch, Venter, and Hanna 2006 used the brand identity as moderator to influence the brand image. So just like what Bosch, Venter, and Hanna 2006 did in their paper, we also used the brand identity as moderator. And we proposed a moderated mediation model that CEO brand image is positively related to perceived CEO consumer similarity. And this perceived similarity is positively related to the company brand image. And the brand identity moderates the positive relationship between perceived similarity and brand image. In our study, we plan to use AmTurk participants to collect data. The CEOs we will ask participants to assess are 3 high familiarity CEOs and 2 female CEOs. Those CEOs are Elon Musk in Tesla, Jeffrey Bezos in Amazon, Tim Cook in Apple, Mary Barra in General Motors, and Lisa Su in AMD. This list has been tested as the most familiar list of CEOs in the United States and has been used by prior researchers. Because our participants will be required to assess those 5 different CEOs, we have a main concern that the number of items that participants need to answer will be too long, around 200 items. Here we try to fix this problem by including a time gap where we measure the IV and the mediator at time 1 and measure the moderator and DV about 2 weeks later. And the actual bonus of doing it is that we would have less common method bias and would increase the validity of causal inference. Specifically, we will ask participants to evaluate all 5 CEOs and assess participants' CEO familiarity, CEO brand image, and perceived CEO consumer similarity at time 1. When participants are about to evaluate CEO brand image, our survey will display pictures of CEOs with their names, just like the way you see Elon Musk on this slide. After 2 weeks, we will ask participants to come back to complete the survey and assess their CEO familiarity again and their brand identity and company brand image. All those measurements we would use are developed by existing research. For the measurement of independent variable CEO brand image, the sample items are CEO overcomes a crisis well, CEO shows a clear vision for the aim of company, and CEO has a good impression. For the mediator, perceived CEO consumer similarity, we use the measure of perceived homophily scale, which is created by Makarowski et al. 1975. Sample items are the CEO behaves like me and CEO's background is similar to mine. For the measures of moderator brand identity, the sample items have a lot of in common with other people using this brand. And I feel that my values and the value of this brand are very similar. For the measurement of dependent variable company brand image, the sample items are this brand has a personality that distinguishes itself from competitors' brands, and it's a brand that doesn't disappoint its customers. To analyze the moderated mediation model, we will use multi-level structure equation model. This modeling technique combines the advantages of multi-level modeling and structure equation modeling. Because first of all, we have a nested data structure. Each participant is rating multiple CEOs. There will be response nested within persons. The spatial data structure makes us consider multi-level modeling. However, if we only use a multi-level regression model, the regression weights will be substantially biased due to the measurement error. So we want to do the simple multi-level regression model. We instead use the multi-level structure equation model to overcome the disadvantage of the simple multi-level model. Basically, we think the multi-level structure equation model is great fit for our data, and it combines the advantage of multi-level modeling and structure equation modeling. our study will make some theoretical contributions. We advance the network literature by empirically testing that similar people have a strong tendency to form ties to each other. We advance the human brand literature by empirically testing CEO brand image's relationship with company brand image. We also make some contributions to the managerial implications. Our study will help advertising and public relation agencies in their development of the creative process, especially when they should generate a message. We also help them in measuring the value of CEO brand image to overall company performance. We have some limitations in our study, and we identify some research directions for future research. We don't distinguish the CEOs to different types. The CEOs representing single branded companies such as Apple, and the CEOs works for multiple brands like Unilever or P&G might have totally different image in consumers' mind. We also don't distinguish founders and the non-founders CEO in our study. Future research could try to test whether different types of CEOs make consumers have a different image, thus affecting company image. Further research could also test our types of leaders with our models, such as entrepreneurs, chairman, boards of directors, and country directors. Yes, I think that's all. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much, Mangyue. Well done. Again, we'll hold off questions to the end. So our third presenter today is from Sylwia Chrabałowska. I'm sure I mispronounced that, my apologies. PhD student from the Warsaw School of Economics, and she will be talking about a role of business model elements in the development of local enterprise.
Hello.
Take it away, Sylwia.
Hear me? I have problem with my phone. Okay, let's start. Sharing. Okay, sure. I want to welcome you all, especially you, our chairman session, James, dear guests and colleagues. Before we begin, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me. May I welcome to my presentation. I'm here today to talk to you about the 6-step method, which helps to build an individual business plan. I'm here to maybe inspire someone to take your heart and your knowledge and help someone who needs you, because we heard yesterday about peak startups in our world, and I think people who would like to help young people, it will be great that my presentation to inspire you. I have divided my speech into 4 parts. First, I will look at the definition of the business model. Then I will look into the canvas of the business model based on Osterwalder and Pinior. The next point will cover the 6-step method, which supports micro-entrepreneur. Finally, I will share with you my observations of the benefits of the 6-step method. So let's start. Hamel, at leading the revolution in Harvard Business School, press word 4 essential elements of the business model: strategy, assets, relations with buyers, value chain. Gołębiowski and co-workers at Business Models of Polish Companies, in turn, divided business model into basic business assumptions, action patterns showing procedures, resources, internal and external relations, main relationships between the model's components. There is Osterwald and co-workers definition on the slide, and I use it because it's the shortest meaning and it sums up well what a business model is. And I think today we have to think wider, and I believe like Hamel that size can be an advantage, but size could be huge and small. Furthermore, these first and second cases could be an advantage. That's why it's such a popular idea to think globally and act locally. And in my opinion, this is the best way to start and to make a plan for scaling a business. Here is my own work and introduced to this. All elements of the business model create a coherent picture of the planned business activity, where specific people with individual sets of personality traits and our own private and professional life experience. Therefore, the business model is a unique reflector to how an entrepreneur and his micro-enterprise create value and profit. And we have two sides, efficiency and value. Why identified audience is the first element. The value is the heart, at the heart of the business model. The value affects relationships with recipients and the channel of reach them. The sources of income depend on the recipients. In turn, key partners, activities, and resources contribute to the shape and quality of the value offered, while the whole determines the final cost and profit. Yes. And on the other hand, observation during a consultation with local micro entrepreneur, because I'm a founder of Women's Power Foundation. So I work for 5 years and help support them. And during these observations, the first they have an idea for a product or service, and then look for a solution to offer the value. That's why in practice, very often we have to start from value, not from audience, for instance. And the ideal audience is given specific characteristic from tastes to social factors to financial opportunities. The above allows directing all messages to the ideal recipients, translating into the offer effectiveness. It will resonate with people with characteristics close to the outlined silhouette. We live in a time when the recipients decide everything. Even more so if, like local entrepreneurs, he feels the adverse effects of global pandemic COVID-19. Yes, so they're very important. For each audience, micro entrepreneurs need to build separate channels from communication and distribution and sales. Their shape depends on which audience the offers are targeted to. It should not be separated from the audience expectations themselves. It's necessary to build the tailored relationships levels necessary for the sales procedures success. For micro entrepreneurs, planning to do business is essential to determine through with channels and how relationships will be established with different audiences of products or services. They need the setting and whether channels will be integrated and what their design will be the best economical solutions for the enterprise, because sometimes too much it's not good for start, yes? And the number of financial streams is directly related to each customer groups. Group service and the enterprise customer relationships. For instance, a micro enterprise that manages vegetable sales point at a local market gains an advantage if it alone allows its customers to pay by phone or card. Of course, the price and its mechanisms are just as important too, but the novice entrepreneur must be aware of the market in which he wants to start a business. Also knows how the different recipients determine income sources. Yes, and the next step, key resources. Key resources enable the enterprise to function correctly. From the observation during a consultation with local micro entrepreneurs, it appears that in their opinion, everything seems to be just as important. Everything is the same level to important, and they don't know what they need to do firstly. And that's why support for a young entrepreneur who building his business model is so essential. For instance, an expert assistanting could help to release which activities in the enterprise are key. And a micro enterprise defines which activities are critical. It is easy to pinpoint the areas where it will be looking for a business partner. And the next and the least but not the least, a financial plan is needed. Those are micro entrepreneurs who did not consider all fixed and variable costs when valuing the offer can quickly join those who decide to suspend their business. And we live in rapidly changing environment. It could also be proposed that a micro enterprise should use scenario methods for economic activities whose sources of revenue and cost vary significantly depending on the scenario adopted. And just before I finish, I would like to share a recommendation. I think being flexible is essential. It's worth checking after each step whether any corrections should be made in the previous one. The 6-step method uses elements of a business model to work with people who to prevent their unemployment, prepare to start a business, or looking for free support for the business. And there are 3 reasons why I recommend this. Firstly, this is an easy way to support beneficiaries in making a business plan, easy to implement. Secondly, that Mekong learns to think about an audience needs, also income and costs. It's a straightforward way for people who have not theoretical basic in management. Finally, in my opinion, the 6-step method can also be implemented as part of the employment office assistance in job centers, especially with young persons who prefer to be an entrepreneur than employed full-time or unemployed. So I've covered all points. I want to thank you for taking time out to listen to my presentation. Thank you very much for attention and time.
Thank you very much, Sylwia. Okay, we will now open it up for questions from the audience or comments. So Mangyue, I had a question for you.
Yes.
You still? So when I was looking at your organizations that you were going to use to look at CEO brand image and company image, a couple of them seem very straightforward. Tesla is obviously Elon Musk and Amazon is obviously Jeff Bezos. But when I think of Apple, I think of Steve Jobs because I grew up with Steve Jobs and obviously now it's Tim Cook. And I'm wondering, are you at all concerned of spillover like that between iconic CEOs who have run organizations and then other organizations that have many CEOs like GM? I mean, I would guess most people don't know Mary Barra is the CEO of General Motors because they've had it last. So are you concerned at all, or how do you plan on controlling for that spillover effect?
Actually, originally we only have Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Tim Cook are in our CEO list, but sooner we found maybe the gender difference of the CEO could affect our model. So we include Mary Barra and Lisa Su from the other companies and see whether we will get some interesting result. And I think what you said is very interesting. Yeah, we will think about that.
Okay. Other questions from anybody? So Sylvia, I had a question for you.
Yes, please.
So I teach the strategic management class, and over the last few years, I have included some of the articles discussing business models. And I have found that it is a very holistic and systemic way to think about an organization. I think it's very valuable. But I've also noticed that many students have a difficult time thinking in that big, holistic, global perspective. So do you think that most entrepreneurs have the abilities to think through an organization from a systemic, holistic perspective?
Last, I have a mentoring process with a student from our SGH, and he has an idea too, and I use that that way to in work with him, and he realized that he needs to pick up in year his audience, and then he could planning bigger and wider, and maybe he in the future build international support for students for all. It's a global idea now. And firstly, it was only for high school. So when we think about incomes and who will pay for our offer, it's very helpful that you realize that your audience is in the different place. And I think that's what I said, that you have to try and step 2 steps for through and step back, yes, because you have to check that idea is good and that all elements fix it to or maybe suit each other. And I think it's very simple way. And I have many small business who change way, and they are for now. 5 years ago, I start with women from my district, Bemowo in Warsaw, and I have a few business which are really great. And I think maybe 3 for them are global business now. So it's specific, but and it's my way for life and help people. And I have energy for this, and I'm very happy if my 1 hour when I have headache, and I have 3 daughters, so I have really many activities. So it's very happy for me if I could help someone and change someone's life, because for start, people don't have money for mainstream help, so they need free help. And I think everyone could do 1% more than have to. And it's a huge change in the world, I think.
Excellent, very good.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
May I have a question to Mangyue?
Go ahead,
Was
Anna.
it, yes, sorry about pronunciation. Was it difficult to find women as a CEO for your research? Because as I understand, first, or you find easily the male part of the research, and then you add, yes, women as a CEO. Am I right?
Yes. Because previous researchers only focus on male CEOs because they have much high level of familiarity to unite to the people in United States. So, but we want to bring something new, and we want to see whether there is gender difference that make our model interesting. So add female CEOs like Mary Burr and Lisa Su, but those two female CEOs are also very famous and has some kind of familiarity in the people of United States. So that's why we add them.
Don't you think to add some famous names which are not famous now, but they were famous CEO? Let's say it means that they used to be, I don't know, maybe California or other people. There were times when she was very famous.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well,
so maybe that's the question. What's happened? And okay, so just it's very interesting. I will follow you as you and your results because it's sounds very interesting for me.
oh, thank you.
So thank you for this presentation.
Thank you.
I think Carly Fiorina is a very interesting example because my wife worked for Hewlett Packard for a long time, so I followed them. And Hewlett and Packard were very reserved and you never really knew about them. But when Carly Fiorina, she started coming out with advertisements attempting to both build HP's brand, but it looked like she was also attempting to build her own brand because she subsequently, made a run for president. So she is a very interesting person who was simultaneously trying to change HP's brand and her own brand. So she would be interesting to look at.
Thank you.
I have maybe one comment, if I may, and also a question. One comment about the research and the presentation from Armina. That was very interesting and very interesting. I can't wait to read about the results for the final results from your research. I'm also wondering about doing something similar, but not for financial services, but for in the context of healthcare and health insurance. Like but I had in mind some research about doing more of like willingness to pay, and doing this kind of risk model and decision model based on in the context of healthcare. But this is definitely very interesting, and your research methods and approach. So I will definitely be following up your research to see how can I apply it in the context of my interests. And I also have a question to Mangyue. I'm sorry for my presentation for the pronunciation.
Thank you. Yeah, it's correct.
Okay, I was wondering about your criteria for selection participants. I mean, for example, if I'd imagine that if somebody is a shareholder of Apple, for example, they may have a bit different approach or perception about the brand if they have personal financial interest in it. So I wonder if have you think about that, or are there any selection criteria for participants in terms of relationship to the company, to the brand?
Yeah, right now we only we have a very broad criteria to select our participant. I think like almost everyone could have some kind of brand image or CEO brand image in their mind. So we are not trying to differentiate people who work in company. They might know more about that brand and they might have different CEO brand image, something like that. We didn't consider that, but that is interesting. We will definitely consider what you said. Yes, that's interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll ask a question for Armina. Since you have some preliminary results on the second experiment, but not too big of a sample size yet, it looked like what you were seeing was a pretty sizable gap between the control group and everybody else. So are you starting to get the intuition that maybe any kind of social influence information is what's driving these effects? Or do you think will really start to see differences between those sort of variations in the social information?
So I would like to see some different, I would like, it would be more, I think, a more interesting story. If the story is just, yes, other people influence our decisions, that's kind of, that's an old story. So I think what we're trying to show, it's not just the other other individuals' decisions influence our decisions, but they actually, in fact, change our levels of risk aversion. I think that's a more interesting story to tell. And if we can see some, differences, whether it's just it's one person who you know of, it's, keeping up with Jones's kind of idea, if that makes more influence in your decision making compared just to the, people out of the general population, that would be interesting if we see something like that. Right now we don't have, we need more data.
So you inspire me, Alex, to ask a question to Armina as well, because I'm interested in women's and corporate board of directors, and generally in literature I find that the researchers said that women's are more risk aversion, have more risk aversion than men. Do you think there are any gender differences in your research, or you didn't research this part of? I don't want to ask it's true, but generally, if you think it's something in it or not.
Yeah, so there's been some research that just showed that women are more risk averse. We didn't control for gender. We definitely have this information, so we could potentially run that and see if gender makes a difference. We wanted to understand if there are any personality traits. That's why we included the two personality scales to see if somebody who is maybe more susceptible to influence in general, they'll they will see a greater effect for those individuals. Yes, but it's a good point. So we can, could potentially include the gender data to see if that makes a difference. But
thank you.
Okay,
as a follow-up to that, Anna, that raises an interesting point that the framing of the social influence in the experiment is neutral. You're not told whether or not it's a male or female who has made that choice. And I wonder how much that would influence people's risk aversion if they were told that it was a man choosing the riskier option or a woman choosing the riskier option. What do you think? What do you speculate on that?
Yeah, so that's, maybe we'll get the result that we don't want to see, that men have more influence than women in ability to influence others and, in our society. But that would be an interesting question. Yeah, right now it's gender neutral. That's the same reason going to Mangyue's research. Why is it that we have more male CEOs that we can easily think of? And I was, actually thinking, well, Indra Nooyi, she was the Pepsi CEO, and Carly Fury, there are other, and the IBM CEO, Ginny Palmetti, she, but there's a lot of female CEOs, but sometimes they seem to have a lower profile than male CEOs. But that's an interesting question.
Yeah. Hello, Mehmet. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Yeah, and sorry I missed the presentations because, that's the a bad part of having concurrent sessions. But the good thing is that we were supposed to do only one graduate session, but seeing the interest and demand, right? So we said, well, let's do two. But because of the time difference, we had to finish everything by roughly around noon. So otherwise we would have actually not done it this way. And in the other one, I had one student that I'm working with who was presenting. So, I had to be there. So
it's challenging to run. It's challenging to wear so many hats, but thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any final questions? Well, let me say thank you to our 3 presenters today. They were all excellent presentations, and I think everybody looks forward to seeing the final results, and seeing what you come up with and seeing what we can build on. So with that, we will call an end to this session. And is there anything after this, Mehmet, or is this it?
No, this is it. But let me make a quick note here that there is a plan. Of course, as you probably already know, like we were doing this in person before, right? So like this is the 3rd one, and this is the first time like we are doing it, as a virtual symposium. But like normally we do it in person. So we are planning for like a 4th symposium that will be in person, and that will be in Reno. So that's in the works, because the agency that is funding this project, they say, hey, like, you guys still have the money. You could use it for this, for another symposium. So they allowed us to do a 4th one, because initially it was just like, for 3 years and 3 symposia. So we're adding a 4th one. So hopefully in the fall semester, there will be an in-person, like in a symposium, most likely in Reno. So just wanted to mention that as well. Like, so, when that happens, we would like to, continue with the graduate student involvement, and an in-person interaction, of course, is always better.
Absolutely. That sounds awesome. Well, thanks for all your efforts. I know this is a lot of work, especially transitioning it to an all online presentation.
I know everybody is getting tired of like Zoom meetings, and like, we are Zoom fatigued, right? So I definitely get that, and I feel the same way. So that's why, hey, let's, like finish this up and like, start maybe like a fresh start in the fall, like, with in-person classes and meetings and travel.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. It was a pleasure somewhat meeting you, and hopefully we'll see you soon in person in the fall.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
All the
Thank
best.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.